So thank you all for joining. This is the second in our series of the Ironside Take30, where we take a half hour to get together with you all on various topics. So we're going to be sending out a calendar of events tomorrow, but the basic breakdown is going to be Tuesdays are going to be data science, AI, and ML at 1 p.m. Wednesdays are going to be data modeling, all things data. Those are at 12 noon, and then Thursdays will be that'll be business intelligence Thursday, where we get together at 10 a.m. So again, look for that calendar of events coming out. In terms of BI, we're going to cover the number of different technologies that we work with. And certainly we're open to your suggestions as well. So today we're going to focus on the Microsoft BI stack, so Power BI, where Michael Vollmer and John Fellner are going to take us through creating a centralized metadata model. Here's a brief look at the agenda. This is basically our mantra. This is the reason we get out of bed every day. It's about helping all of you make better decisions using data. So jump ahead one. So wanted to cover this, tell you more about Ironside. So data and analytics are critical for decision making in any organization, but especially now. When deploying or enhancing analytic capability, we at Ironside see these 6 steps in the center of the wheel as critical to any successful implementation. This model is meant to outline how Ironside can assist your organization with all these steps, no matter where you are in the journey. Up at the top, we offer advisory services both at the strategic and tactical level. We can help you with the design of your technical architecture, your data structures, and analytic interfaces using design thinking. We have deep expertise in building all manner of analytics, be it data, AI, and machine learning, dashboards and reporting, both on-prem and in the cloud, across a range of the most prominent vendor technologies. We can help you deploy, upgrade, and migrate your analytics ecosystem. We can help you manage your data and content to ensure it is well governed and provides a single view. And then finally, we offer data science as a service, managed platform services, and flexible development, so you can focus on innovation and generating business value from data. So with that, I will turn it over to Michael.
First off, thanks everybody for being here this morning. I know everybody's on quarantine and the lights in my face here, but I do appreciate everybody joining us for this presentation. A couple of quick background things here. I'm Michael Vollmer, obviously. Some people I think on the call know me already. I'm a senior consultant at Ironside. And also on this slide, I really quickly want to point out, we're going to move forward here, but as we go through this presentation and there's additional questions or additional help that you might need, there is an email address that we are monitoring called heretohelp@ironside.com. And you guys can actually send emails to this and ask questions around Power BI or a plethora of other technologies. And so we are here to, again, provide that help, provide that knowledge as much as possible, right? All right. So overall, today's goal here is to talk about Power BI data sets. So we're not really going to go into what is Power BI. The idea here is, again, this is a very focused class, but everybody understands what Power BI is. It's Microsoft's business analytics tool that's built in the cloud, right? So as part of this offering, it's been around, I guess, about 5 years now, and it's really taken off, and it's starting to become very popular, but it has initially started off as a self-service tool, right? The idea was to allow end users to build reports very quickly. But as we move forward, we decided, we need the ability to create a more enterprise type of solution here, right? One of those enterprise solutions is this concept of shared data sets, right? And so that's what we're really going to focus on today, is how to share data sets or create a universal data set metadata model, right? So again, moving a little quickly here, but just want to touch on some of the key terms that we're going to talk about. Power BI desktop client, that is simply just that. It's a Microsoft Windows client that we'll use you can use to build reports, but for this presentation, we're mostly going to talk about how you build data sets and how you can consume the data sets from them, right? Power BI service, that's the cloud online web-based version of Power BI. So that's basically the portal where you can share your data sets, you can share your metadata, and you can share your reports, right? Then data sets themselves, the data sets are, in this concept, are going to be your metadata model. So if you're familiar with other tools, you know, that's the catalog, it's the central metadata model that you would use to connect to your database. It already has predefined joins, predefined tables, calculations, things like that, right? And again, if you're looking at it online, you know, it's going to be in the data set tab. All right, so let's talk about what shared data sets are and some of the pros and cons. So a shared data set is self-explanatory. It's a data set that you're going to create that is going to be reusable across your organization, right? So instead of having multiple data sets everywhere, the idea here is we're creating reusable, consistent content. We're going to centralize all our metadata logic into one metadata model, right? So obviously, without reading through the slides here, but common sense is going to reduce your maintenance, right? So instead of everybody having their own little island of data, you're going to have one central data source, right? And again, similar to our existing enterprise solutions out there that are out there, you have one content, right? The idea here is it can be governed and endorsed, obviously, by single developers, right? The key here is you're separating data set creators from the actual report writers. So if I'm a report writer, I don't really have to know all the logistics behind the scenes of how the data connects. I can just consume the data, right? Whereas we might have a different team that might be, say, a DBA or a data expert that's more focused on creating the calculations, creating the joins, doing the data modeling itself, right? So that's kind of the concept here, is we're separating those two audiences here, right? Now, one of the new features, shared data sets, I will say, have the idea of sharing data set is not new, but one of the newer features as of July of last year is the fact that you can share data sets across workspaces, right? And that's what makes this much more powerful. So you don't have to have access to that specific workspace, maybe, but you can have all your data sets in one, workspace, and they can be shared into other workspaces and be consumed as such, right? Couple little disadvantages, again, most of these are common sense, is one of the downsides of this is now you're reliant on, another team to create your data set. So if you need additional tables, additional content, another team in theory will have to maintain that, and will have to go through that process, right? And then obviously the more and more reports that are being used by the data set, we're going to have, you have the potential of affecting more objects, right? Instead of having multiple silo reports and data set combinations, now you have multiple reports pointing to one data set. So you have to be careful about that. But again, these aren't new concepts. These are the pros and cons really with any enterprise solution that you use, right? So, all right. So to dig into this, so how do we build a shared data set? It's simple enough. You build it just like any other data set, right? You have to use Power BI desktop. You build your data set in your Power BI desktop, and then it's consumed by all the different reporting clients, right? So be it the desktop, another desktop client, again, we can consume it. You can consume it on Power BI web services, right? So web service, so you can build reports from there, or you can actually use the Power BI Excel add-in, right? Called Analyze in Excel, right? And then the key thing here is not that it's required, but you can share, again, across workspaces. So that's really the important part here, is that what's fairly new is this sharing a data set across multiple workspaces instead of having a data set in each workspace. A couple requirements, not necessarily around shared data sets, but around sharing across workspaces. One, you have to be using the new workspace experience in Power BI service. So again, there's a little new icon button that's going to be in the top corner there. I think most everybody has it turned on. I know if you're a new user in the last few months, it automatically is enabled, but you do have to enable that. The other thing is by default, I believe it is turned on, but you need to, like, if you can't, for some reason, can't share your data set across workspaces, you can go into the admin screen, and under the tenant settings, there is an option to enable share data sets across workspaces. Now, you can control that and give it to your entire organizations, or you can allow that only by a certain group of people, right? So there isn't any way to necessarily do it at the granular level of a data set specifically, but it's mainly by users. So a couple real quick quick bullet points, and this actually comes from Microsoft, that's why it's wordy. But to be able to share the data set, it's going to be the same licensing constraints, if you will, for any other data set. Is if you want to share a data set to the public area, right, across any public workspace besides your My Workspace, you're going to have the pro license, right? I mean, that's really, that makes sense, right? It's not free. So you can create a data set in your personal MySpace and then allow other people to consume that on the desktop using a desktop, or you could consume it using your desktop, right? But you're not really going to be able to share that with multiple people unless you are a pro user, right? Additionally, if you put it in a premium backed workspace, you can avoid some of that, right? But again, if it's in a premium workspace, and that's going to allow you to share out of that workspace itself, right? So again, these aren't new requirements. These are just existing requirements that I'm reiterating about any kind of data set or any kind of report that you're going to share to your organization, right? And again, you can read through the rest of this, but mostly, again, report at the end of the day, you're going to need pro license. That's really the general gist here, right? Pro license basically gives you access to the full features of Power BI as far as sharing content. All right, so a couple things you need to know about the permissions, right? So just like any other data set, if I want people to access it, if I want them to be able to build reports off my data set, then they're going to need build access, right? And again, that's what we're showing here. A user can consume a report that is built against the data set, not necessarily build a new one. In that case, they would need read-only access against that data set. So again, just like any other data set, it's nothing new here. But again, if you have a shared data set in a different workspace or wherever it may be, the key here is that if you want to allow people to build net new reports, they're going to have the right permissions, right? And that being build or read only for report consumption. All right, so let's quickly look at what a shared data set looks like on Power BI Service. So in a different workspace, right, that's not the main data set. So this is a shared data set called Visual Insights. And I can tell it's shared because if I look at the icon, it's got a little link or a chain link icon, right? And if I notice for that data set, there's a very limited properties, right? I can open it, I can do the analyze in Excel, but I can't actually see the permissions. There's no refresh button, there's no other button. So that's one of the things you know is that the data set is just a link to the other data, to the master data set, right? So you don't have to worry about, maintaining a separate schedule for different workspaces and all that jazz. Again, it's just a linkage to it. So, and the way that gets created is if you create a report and you save it in a new workspace, it's automatically going to create that link data set for you in that workspace, right? Now, if we go back and look at the master, right, it's obviously a different icon, and then obviously you're going to see the other full features of the master data set. You're going to be able to refresh it. You're going to be able to change the permissions, things like that, right? Now, one thing I do want to point out that we didn't really put a lot of notes on, but if you're going to create shared data sets, you're going to want to probably implement endorsements. In this case, this is a promoted data set. It's a really straightforward process. It really is just a property a toggle that you turn on, but it's a badge that tells people, it lets your users know, hey, this is a vetted data set that we've gone through and we validated it. We want you to consume this for reporting, right? It's been built correctly. We've gone through the due diligence of making sure that this is report ready or validated and ready for people to consume, right? So again, it doesn't necessarily change the data set, but it does give a key indicator to your users, right? And then there's another level, a higher level called being certified. Again, it doesn't change anything, it's just a different badge, right? One of the things I want to point out is as you start sharing your data set, you're going to want to know what all the content is attached to that shared data set. So if you're looking at the master data set, there's a little share icon, right? And these little, it's a fairly universal symbol, but if I click on that, what it will show me, all the related content. So it'll show me, like, for example, in this workspace called Visual Insights, I can see the reports that are related to it, but in the other workspaces, I can then go through and see all the different other reports that are connected to this data set, right? So that'll give you some visibility into the volume of objects that are attached to it. It also allows you to go and track down those objects, right? So how do you build, again, a shared data set? Just like normal data sets, you're going to build it in the desktop client. This is one of our robust models that I created for an existing client. Here, for example, I spent a lot of time. We have multi-fact joins. There's a different levels of granularity, et cetera, right? So I built this robust model. And again, it's all in memory. And I built this for dashboard reporting, and I wanted to share it to other people, right? I want multiple dashboards or multiple different groups in the organization to be able to use it, but I didn't want them to have to go through the struggle and have to recreate this, right? Additionally, it has quite a bit of DAX calculations and other things, right, that are built in here. The key thing here is that I control this as an admin, right? So if I need to change something or something additional needs to be added, I don't have to worry about my end users having to touch their model. They're just going to consume this, right? So from an enterprise standpoint, that's much more desirable. Now, from an end user standpoint, how do they consume that? And the key here is if you're in the desktop, is when they go to get data, instead of picking from a database table or Excel file or whatever it may be, one of their sources is a Power BI data set. So this Power BI data set, again, would be published back to Power BI service, right? So that's the key. You have to publish it to the service. And then they would just pick the Power BI data set, and they would basically see that model. What they wouldn't see, they wouldn't see all the table behind it. They wouldn't see the joins. They would just see the metadata itself, right? Now, one thing to note is they still can create calculations at the report level. They can create calculations, DAX calculations just for that report, right? And it'll be stored with that report itself. But they will not be able to edit or actually even see the definition of the DAX calculations created in the shared data set. So they're insulated from the complexity behind the scenes, and also they can't modify anything, right? But they do have the flexibility of, just like any other reporting tool, creating report level calculations. So when they select the shared data set or the data set option from as data source, they'll see all data sets in the organization that they have access to. And notice there's no really report, there's no folder structure. So that's where that endorsement flag or endorsement badge comes in, is it lets them know out of all the data sets they have access to, you know, this one is endorsed, it is promoted, this lets them know this is the one they should probably look at, right? And then lastly, you can also consume the data set, a shared data set, or any data set really in Excel, right? And that's key because you have obviously a lot of people that still use Excel. It's not going away. So using the Analyze in Excel feature allows them to consume that complicated, complex data set model that you vetted and that you've done all the work for. Now they can consume in Excel with a real live connection. So if you make changes to it, it flows all the way down to Excel, right? So people that want to build reports in Excel as they normally do, they still can use, again, analyzing Excel against that data set, but again, from an enterprise standpoint, they're consuming the logic that you created from a centralized metadata standpoint. So we're on the Q&A, so I guess we can open this up to the audience here. Feel free to ask any questions that you have here. Also, additionally, if there are additional topics, especially around Power BI, that you guys would like more information on, for future Take30 coffee breaks, we're more than happy to take those questions down and come back and answer those maybe in future presentations.
Hey, thanks, Michael, for that. Appreciate it. Question: how do you promote or certify a data source, and what is the meaning of that in Power BI? What power does that have?
That's a good question, and I will show you that right now. And again, really, the promotion itself, it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything special around the data set itself. It's just that it's a badge letting your users know that they can that this has been certified, right? So, and it's actually in the properties of the data set itself. So it looks like they changed the layout here just recently. So anyway, if I'm looking at the data set properties, let's go to settings. I believe it's under. There's an endorsement, and then you simply just say it's promoted, right? And that's it. So default is no badge, no icon, or I can click promote. So there really doesn't change again the data set, but it adds that to it. So if you're working on a data set that's not quite ready for the end users, but somebody has access to it, because again that could just happen, right? If everybody's working the same workspace, potentially you're working on a development model, then just leave it as a default. Certified is just another level. It's basically saying, hey, listen, this has passed some internal organizational sign off, whatever that may be. It doesn't change anything as far as how you certify it necessarily. It's just again, the idea there is that this has to be done at a more of an admin level. And so you actually do this, if I'm not mistaken, it's done under the administration screen, right? So under the admin portal, there's a section that allows you to certify it. So the idea there is that it's not like the end user just can't promote the data set. It has to go through an admin itself, Power BI, right? So.
Got it. Okay. So you have to exercise good governance around who executes that.
Exactly. That's the idea behind it, right? And I don't have admin access to do that on this on our test over here, but that's the key, right? I mean, like for example, I'm not a Power BI admin, but I can easily create a data set and promote it, right? Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's been certified. So certified is your top level. You know, the admin has signed off on it too, right? So that's why you can't just go into the settings and change that.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Michael. So I had a question about data flows and data sets. Is it possible to associate a data flow into a data set and then share it, or can you separately share data flows like you share data sets?
Well, data flows are a little slightly different concept, but if you can share it now, right, in a data set, it doesn't, the shared data set concept, it's really a concept, right? It's not necessarily that it's a new technology in that aspect. So if you have a data flow already, you can consume it inside when you build the data set, or you can connect it to it, right? So that wouldn't change anything, right? You're still gonna have to create the data set itself, right?
Yep.
Now I won't lie to you, I don't do a whole lot with the data flows themselves just because I haven't had a need to, but again, I know that they feed into a data set, so that's not anything different. You wouldn't do anything different from that. The key with the shared data set is really more of, again, a management type of thing, where you are creating a data set, you're promoting that data set, and you're making sure everybody knows, hey, this is one master model, right? Because prior to that, I think Power BI in general has, it was a different audience initially, right? It was more geared towards quick turnaround, allowing people to build reports against Excel or some kind of data source that's on their desktop. But you can take that further and make it a more enterprise solution. And then one thing I didn't talk about, but in that data set, you can add in row level security. You can add in other, levels of security into that. So you can actually make it a more robust model. So, but again, to answer your question with Peter on the bush here is that it's not any different than any other data flow data set, combination.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I have situations where I have to do manual refreshes of data in a data flow that then I would love to promote out to an organization to utilize.
Right. And again, it's just a data set. So the data flow could kick off the data set refresh.
Yeah.
Or you could, not to get too off topic, but you could write, there's scripts you can write. There are the APIs there. I actually wrote a script for a client recently that's part of an SSSI, a SQL agent SSIS routine that kicks off after the data warehouse build, things like that. So there are a couple ways you can do that. But again, it's a data set, so it has all the full features like a normal data set would have, right? So.
Okay, great, thank you.
But just to touch on that, that is kind of key though, right? Is by building this, and again, it's really a concept. By building this master data set that you're having everybody share, is that the idea is there you would do all the additional admin things that would make it an enterprise solution, right? So having it either scheduled or run at, or tied into by a trigger or whatever it may be from an ETL process or data flow process, whatever. That's what makes this key, right? Now we didn't get into it either, but also it's in memory, right? So if I build this big model, it's all in memory. I don't have to, people can consume that same memory instead of having to have individual models out there, right? So.
Right. No, it sounds like a great organizing tool.
Right. And again, this isn't a new concept, right? This isn't, the share across workspaces is new, and I think that's really where it, made a big improvement on this. But when I started with Power BI a while back, it didn't seem like they were necessarily pushing that. It wasn't a concept that was something they pushed right off the bat. You just kind of have to know about it, right? Like you have to kind of take a step back and go, hey, what if, type of scenario. And coming from a I would say a legacy, I guess, background on BI tools, IBM Cognos, for example. That concept of a master model, right, or separating the metadata from the reporting is key, right? And that's really the idea here, is that when you build this data set itself, I didn't really touch on that, but the data set, when you build it, you don't really add any report content. It's really just a blank report, and it's just a data set. So in the actual, let's see if I can actually open it, but in the actual model itself, it really is a very basic model. There's not much else to it, right? So the idea there is you're not going to consume the report side, you're just working on the data set. And so it does kind of give us that two levels, right, of report writers versus data modelers.
Yes, no, I get it. I'm living through a Cognos transition right now, so I know what you speak of.
And we're doing a lot of those, right? I mean, there's not to get too far off in that, but the pros and cons. But we're definitely right there with you with the expertise on that and just the experience around it, because that's obviously there's some things that you can or cannot do, but we're finding more and more things that as you get more and more familiar with Power BI, that you can leverage some of the same concepts that Cognos had, right? So paginated reports, for example, things like that, being pixel perfect, things like that. There's tools for that. There's a lot more coming out of the pipeline that we have access to as a silver partner. And John Fellner actually was showing me earlier, but they're about to come out with more tool sets around change management, right? So if I have a shared data set, I have 20 or 50 or 100 reports, I want to be able to see how that affects when I publish that report. Then there's going to be a tool set here. I think in the next few months it's going to allow you to do that. So you can do it like an analyze impact, like you used to do in Cognos, right? So, and again, you guys have the. I want to point this out before you leave here, but the here to help email. So easy enough to remember, here to help at Ironside. So that's key. You can use that, send in questions, and we'll respond. Right? I mean, that's kind of the goal here, is just support our end base, right? Also make new connections.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael and John. And thank you all for joining. And look forward to seeing you on the next session, Take 30. So thank you very much.